This is Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah Daf Mem, and we're going to start from Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis. Let's make it big. Okay, Lamed Tes Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Ve'elu, we're talking about again. What are you allowed to buy from a goy? Okay, assuming you have no OU. Okay, ve'elu mutarim b'achila. The following things, if you buy from a goy, it's permitted to eat. Cholov shechalav goy v'yisrael ra'eu. The animal, the cow belongs to the guy, and the guy milked the cow, and a Jew saw him milk the cow. Hi, Lewis. We just began Lamed Tes Amud Beis in the Mishnah. The Mishnah begins and says the following: you're permitted to eat from a goy. It's cholov that the goy milked from his cow, and the Jew was like seeing as he was milking it, so that he doesn't put in any tamei milk into that mixture. V'hadavash. Here, it doesn't really mean honey, it means liquid mead, which is formed through dates. So it's like a liquid, like an intoxicating beverage. And you're allowed to buy it from a goy because he's not going to put in wine in it. It'll just spoil the recipe. And also, although, you don't sit down and in goy's house and have a beer, but you're allowed to buy these things and take it home to yourself. Then you're allowed to buy v'hadav vonus. You have grapes that looks like it's flowing juices out of it. So in order to maybe make it look nicer, we're afraid there's a possibility the guy will spray wine on those grapes. So that's not true. It's almost like you have an orange and they spray orange juice on top of those oranges. So I would think that they sprayed wine on top of those grapes. So the Mishnah says not so. And not only that, even though there's liquids oozing out of those grapes, it doesn't make the grapes susceptible to tumah, because you actually are buying the grapes to eat, not to make wine. And then you have, let's say, a pickled vegetable. Now, the way they make pickles in this country is they don't put wine or vinegar into that recipe to make the pickled vegetable. So then you can buy it from a guy. Then the Mishnah says, v'taris. This is a type of small fish, she'ena trufa, that's not minced. So it's a type of small fish. If you can recognize it as it being a kosher fish, even though it's tiny, you're permitted to eat it. But once it's minced, then it's too cut up so much that you can't recognize if it's kosher. And then vitzir, you have fish brine. So you can buy it from a goy if it's yesh bodaga, if it has a certain kilbis fish in this fish brine. This fish brine, if it's made from kosher fish, then you have this like kilbis, I think it's a tamei fish that happens to grow only in kosher fish brine. But if it's not kosher fish brine, then it's not permitted. Then the Mishnah says, hi, Sheldon, we began from the Mishnah Lamed Tes Amud Beis.
Okay, thank you.
Allah shel chiltis, you're allowed to buy the leaves of the chiltis plant. It's a type of sharp fruit. We're going to see what that is. We already saw that you're not allowed to buy the chiltis fruit, slices of the chiltis fruit, like, you buy sliced cantaloupe. So the chiltis fruit was a sharp type of fruit that we're afraid the guy cut it with his treifa knife, and it made the chiltis treif. I mean, it's an usser. But if you're just buying the leaves of this chiltis fruit, then you're not afraid that he cut it with his knife. If you have soft olives, the super soft olives that are, in a circular cake, so in order to heat up the olives to make them soft and ooze with the oil, there might be a possibility that he put wine in there because wine will add heat to the olives. So the Mishnah says not true. You're allowed to buy it. Rabbi Yossi Omer hashlochin asorim. If you see that it's so loose, that means when you pick up an olive, the pit just drops out, then it's usher, because in order to make that kind of olive, the goy must have put wine. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Hachagavim. If you buy grasshoppers, so grasshoppers, you can tell if it's kosher. But the question is, sometimes they would sprinkle wine on the grasshoppers to make it more look nice. If it comes from the basket in front of the salesperson, asurin. They're usher because probably he put some wine to shine up the grasshoppers, and wine is usher. Mina heftik, but if he pulls it out of his storage house, mutar, that it's mutar because he would not put wine on the grasshoppers in his storage bin because that will ruin the grasshoppers in the long term. The Truma, the same idea goes to Truma. We'll see what that means in the Mishnah. Let's discuss Chol Yisrael. Tanina lahad Tanrabam. The rabbis taught us about Chol Yisrael. How do you make Chol Yisrael? Yoshev Yisrael b'tzad edrei shel goy. A Jew can sit at the side of a herd belonging to a guy, right? The guy choylev loin. The guy does milking the cows. Umevi loin can bring the milk to the Jew who's just sitting there on the side. The Jew can drink it. We're not worried that the guy put in tummy milk. So the Gemara says, "Hey Chedama, what are we talking about over here? Either lekadav tummy be'edrei. If there's no pigs, let's say in that herd, it's just cows. Pshita, of course, the Jew can eat the milk, drink the milk, because the guy has nothing to mix it with. If there's a chazir, let's say in that herd, so why can the Jew eat it? He didn't see it the whole time. He's just sitting on the side of the herd. And says the Gemara, yes. We're talking about there is a davar tamei. When the Jew gets up, he can see the guy milking the cow and can see the whole thing. But if he's sitting in a chair, he can't see the guy. So Mahu, the same I would thought that the guy knows, even the Yosef since when the Jew is sitting, he's not gonna, see so well the guy milking the cows. So therefore, Irtis even Dilma Maisuma Aravba. Maybe he's gonna come mix some treifa milk in a non-kosher milk in the kosher milk, because the Jew is not watching him, the full time. And in fact, when he sits down, he can't even watch him. Kamash Malan, since, and this is a concept in kashrus, even the chikoy, if the Jew would get up, he can watch the guy. Irtuse mirtas, the guy is very scared that the Jew will catch him. V'loy me'arv bey is not going to mix it. And that's the halacha with Chalav Yisrael. Also, you could have even a child watch Chalav Yisrael. You don't need an adult to watch the milking in order to make a Chalav Yisrael. The Mishnah says Vadvash, mead, mead, I think. Dvash to my nekashlo. What should I be concerned about that you're not allowed to buy it from a guy? Imishim iruve, maybe the guy, in order to make it more alcoholic, he's going to mix in wine. So the Gemara says, Mr. Sorry, that ruins the recipe. This recipe is mead, an alcoholic beverage made from dates. Imishim b'shulei goyim, how are you afraid the guy cooked the mead? Nachol kamoishu chai. There's nothing. It's not bishul akam because you could eat it without the guy cooking it. So that's not usur of bishul akam. Bishul akam is something that you couldn't eat raw, like an egg. Imishum giulei goyim. Are you concerned about maybe the guy is storing the maid into his vessels that have isser in the walls? No, it gives a repugnant taste into the dvash, and therefore the dvash, the mead, will be mutter. Says the Mishnah, these grapes that are flowing with juices don't make the grapes susceptible to tumah. Says the Gemara, if you cut grapes to press and make wine, Shami says the juices that come out automatically make the grapes susceptible to tumah. It's not susceptible to tumah. And she'll agree to Shammai. Nay, once the juices start coming out, the grapes are susceptible to tumah. So we see the juices coming out of a grape make the grape susceptible to tumah. So how come our Mishnah says the juices coming out of this grape does not make it susceptible to tumah? Answers the Gemara, very simple answer. Hasam ki kaboya leila mashka. You're wanting the grapes to drink. You want to make it into wine. In our Mishnah, you're just buying the grapes to eat. So therefore, you don't want the juices to come out. In fact, you lose the juices. So therefore, it doesn't make it susceptible to tumah, because since you don't want it to come out, it doesn't make it. You don't give importance to this juice, and therefore this juice will not make the grapes susceptible to tumah. Then we learned the Mishnah Vataris, a small fish, a tiny fish, Shein trufa, it's not minced, you can buy it from a goy because you can see that it's kosher. Tanrabanan, ezi tris shein trufa. What's a tris? A kosher fish that's not minced that you can buy it from a goy. Kol sharosh v'shidra nikra. If a person can see the tiny head of this tris and the spine, so you'll be able to tell it's from a kosher fish. So therefore you can buy it. The ezi tzir sheyesh bodaga, and this fish brine that we say it's kosher. How did we say it's kosher? Because it grows this kilbus fish in this kosher fish brine, which can only grow in kosher fish brine. How many kilbuses do you need? So the answer is kol shekilbus achas, so shtei kilbus shaititais. We go to Amid Aleph, shaititis by. As long as you can see one or two kilbuses, fish swimming there in the fish brine, boom, you can automatically assume that the fish brine comes from kosher fish. Says the Gemara, then why do you need two? Hashtra kilbus achas amrchar. If you see one of them, you say it's permitted. Shtei kilbiyas babaya. Do you need to tell me that two would make it kosher? And says the Gemara, like kasha, it's not difficult. Because really, a kilbus can live for a short period of time in a non-kosher fish brine. And therefore, kamba psuchis, if the vessel is open, right, the fish brine came in an open barrel, let's say, so then you need two kilbuses, because it could be it's non-kosher fish brine, and one kilbus happened to fall in there. So therefore, you need two to establish kashrus of that barrel. Kam bestumas. But if the barrel was always closed, and now you're opening it for the first time, all you need to see is one kilbus, and the whole fish brine is kosher. Itmar, we learned before, the tris fish, in order to make it kosher, you need, the Brisa said, you need the head, the spine. And then if you can see that, then it's a kosher fish. So Rav Huna Amar Achete Roishe V'Shidra Nikor, you got to see both, the head and the spine. Rav Nachman Amar Oy Roish Oy Shidra, you need to see or the head or the spine. You don't need to see both. So now, in order to make a fish kosher, can you really tell by looking at its head and looking at its spine? So Masav Rav Ukva Bar Chama, he asked the question, Uvidogim, we learned in the Mishnah, what makes a kosher fish? It's like the Chumash says, Kol Sheyeshli Snape V'Kaskeses, if it has fins and scales. So that's the only thing that makes a fish kosher. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Amar Abaye, Kitan Yehib Ara'a Upalmuda. These type of fish, the Domi Rishai L'Tmeim, that have a head that's similar to non-kosher fish, then you have to look for fins and scales. But a kosher fish tends to have a different type of head. Maybe it has a pointier head and a different type of spine. And therefore, to those type of fish, you don't even have to look for fins and scales. If you can tell it, you can tell by the head and the spine. But Rav Huna holds you need to see both for this tris in order to make it kosher. Even it's a tiny fish, just look for the head and spine. But Rav Nachman said, just look for the head or the spine. Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmei Deula. Yehuda said in the name of Ula, Machlokes l'Talba B'tzirim. Machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Nachman is whether I can dip in the brine of this tris fish. Ava Begufa, if you want to eat this tris fish, everybody agrees it's usher to eat it because maybe the tiny fish is non-kosher. Until you can see the head and the spine of the fish, then you can eat the tris. You can't just rely on one or the other. Amar Rav Zera said, I used to dip in the seer, in the brine of these fish, of the tris fish. Because if I just found the head or the spine, I assumed it was kosher. When I heard this statement of Rav Yehud in the name of Ula, everybody holds that to eat it, you need to have both. So then, then I would never dip in the brine of this tris fish. Because I hold like Rav Huna, in order to establish that it's kosher, you need both. Not only to eat it, the fish itself, but if you want to dip into the brine of that fish, you would also have to see the head and the spine of that fish. Amar Rav Yehud Rapapa. Let's say you have a bunch of little tris fish. Do you have to see the spine and the head of each one of them? That's right. Hilkas Dalacha is Each of these tris fish, you have to see the head and the spine of each one of them. And you can't just assume, oh, I'm going to check 5 of them, and then I could assume the whole plate is kosher. No, you have to check each and every one in order to establish that it's kosher. So it says the Gemara, Meisvei, I'll ask you a question. Let's say the Brisa says, Chatikish yesh behem simim. If you have pieces of fish and they have the simon that it's kosher, that has the sign that it's kosher, bein bekulam, each piece, even if all the pieces, whether all the pieces have that sign, bein mimiktsasa, even if just part of those pieces have that sign, even if one from 100 of these pieces of fish, you find one of 100 that has the sign that it's kosher, you're allowed to eat everything in that bowl. Kulan mutaris, everything's mutar. So why did Rav Papa say you have to see the head and the spine of each and every one of them, when here in this brisa says that all you need to find one piece that's kosher? Omaisa, the brisa says, there was one guy, Sherev Gorav Shachatikas, he brought a barrel full of pieces of fish. The ninsa simon ba'achas, we found one of the pieces in the barrel was kosher. Hit the Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, that's a gar of kula. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel permitted the whole barrel. Answers the Gemara. Papa said, Shabbos. If you can see all the little pieces that they fit together like a puzzle, and they could fit together into one fish, in one piece, then all you have to just check one piece. If it's kosher, you could assume everything else is kosher. Says the Gemara, what is the novelty of that? If you can tell that it all came from one fish, right? And you find, let's say, one piece that has scales on it, so of course everything is kosher. And says the Gemara, the same, I would have thought, maybe a non-kosher fish mixed in over here, and it just happens to have the same size and dimensions of a missing piece of that puzzle to make a picture of a fish. No, we assume that the entire package that you have is from a kosher fish, even though you have only seen one piece that has a kosher simon to it. But in our case over here, by the tris fish, if you have individual fishes over here, and they're small, you have to check each and every one of them, Rav Papa said, to make sure that they have the head and tail of the signs that it's a kosher fish. Says the Gemara, Yosef, Ahu Arba, there was this boat, the Tzachanta, that had this Tzachanta fish. The Asal Sichra, it docked in Sichra. Nafik Rav Huna Bar China v'Chazer Bei Kalfi v'Shari. He looked at the boat and he sees scales all over the floor of the boat. Oh, so you assume that the tzachanta is a kosher fish, and he said this is a kosher fish. Okay, now you're going to have the first machlokes in kashrus organizations. So Rav Huna said it's kosher. Amalei Rava said, "Mi ikad shar kahai gavna." Who could give a hechsher like this? Ba'asher d'shchichi klalfi. Maybe it's a place that this boat carries a lot of fish that have scales in it. How do you know these scales came from the tzachanta fish? So Nafak Shapiro de Rava made an announcement with his shofar, V'asar, and he asked all the fish on that boat. Shipuri de Rav Huna Bar Chanina announced with his shofar, Vishari, and he gave it a heter. You could eat from the boat. So it was a machlekes if this boat had kosher fish or not. Amar Rab Yirmiyah Medifti, L'di Amali Rapapa. Rab Yirmiyah said that Rapapi told me, Kishar Rav Huna Bar Chanina, Betzirin Avav Gufan Loi. Rav Huna only permitted to use the fish brine, but he never allowed you to eat the fish from that boat. Amar Rav Ashi says, not true. The Amali Rav Papa said, Kishar Rav Huna Bar Chanina, Rav Huna Bar Chanina said that it's kosher, Afil Begufa. He allowed you to even eat the entire fish itself, based on his findings. There was shreds of scales on the fish. So therefore, I would never ask such tzachanta fish, because the Kamali Rav Papa said, Rav Huna Bar Chanina said it's kosher that you could eat it itself. But I would never give a heter to eat it. The Amali Rav Yehuda B'Shmei Machlekas Taba B'Tziram B'Gufan Divrei HaKol Achei Roisha V'Shidra Nikra Shkol Ech V'Echad. In order to eat something, you have to see a siman on the fish itself, a complete siman. The only heter is to eat in the tziron, in the fish brine. So Rav Ashi himself, held back in his own personal kashrus, and would not eat the tzachanta fish based on Rav Huna Bar Chanina's hechsher. Now, let's go further, a step further. Yosef Rav Chanina bar Idi kamed Rav Ada bar Ahava. Rav Chanina bar Idi was sitting in front of Rav Ada bar Ahava. V'Yosef came and he said, Goy shehevi areva malei chaves, a goy that brought barrels full of fish brine. The nimtza kilbus ba'achas mem, and in one of those barrels you found a kilbus, but the other ones you didn't find a kilbus. So pirsuchais, if the guy brought open barrels, kula mutaris, then all mutar. And I can assume that the reason why you're not finding the kilbus in the other barrels because they flew out or they jumped out. Vistumais, but if he brought you closed barrels and you open up one and you see a kilbus, but then you open up another and you don't see a kilbus, so the hemataris, the one that you find that there's a kilbus there, that's muta. V'kulan asuris, and they're all aser. Amalei menalacha. So they Rav Ada bar Ahava asked Rav Chanina, how do you know this? That it's kosher. And psuchais is kosher. I have from 3 psukim, in other words, from 3 great rabbis that are like Chumash, that gave me this siman. The Rav, Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan, all held psuchais, all of them are mutar, stumais, only that one is mutar, and the rest are asa. Now, the Gemara starts with a new topic, very interesting topic. Amar Abruna, Amar Rav, kirvei dogim v'ubarim, the intestines of fish and the roe from fish. If you don't know what roe is, fish eggs. Look at the picture over here, and that's fish eggs. Now, fish eggs, are they kosher? How do you know? Are they kosher or not? The Gemara is wondering. So, ein nikochin ela min amumcha. So Rav said that you can only buy it from an expert that can tell you it comes from a kosher fish. So Rula asked to Rabbi Stoy ben Biri, midikama Rav, since Rav says kirvei dog and mibarim ein nikom element mumcha, the Rav said you can't buy fish eggs only from an expert that tells you it's kosher. Michlal, because it's possible fish eggs could be from a non-kosher fish. The dog tummy is uber, that a non-kosher fish could have eggs. And is that true? Raminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. The Mishnah, the Brisa says, dog tummy mashritz. A non-kosher fish, mashritz, gives birth to a fish. Dog tahar, but a kosher fish, matel beitzim, lays eggs. So only a kosher fish lays eggs, not a kosher, non-kosher fish gives birth. Answers the Gemara, Sami Mekan Ubarab. So according to Rav Destoy bin Biri, you could always assume if it's fish eggs, it's always going to be kosher. So according to Destoy bin Biri, you get these fish eggs, it's going to be kosher. I just want to point out to you what we're going to learn now over here, so you might as well see the picture. I have it open. This is a regular chicken egg. As you can notice, it's round at the bottom and it comes to a point at the top. Over here, you'll have an egg from you'll have an egg from it's from an eagle. So this is from an eagle. It's not so round. It's round all around, but it doesn't come to a point. And then from a non-kosher, this is a crocodile egg. You can see the yellow is on the outside, the white is on the inside. We're going to discuss this in a second. Amalei Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera said, Rabbi Zera is going to say, Lama tismi, why should you raise eggs? Tavaya matila beitzim ninu. Everybody, both non-kosher fish and kosher fish, give forth eggs. The non-kosher fish gives eggs on the inside, and then when the fish is born, it's born regularly. But the non-kosher fish lays it in the ocean. That's the difference. But they both produce eggs. Says the Gemara, Lamali mumcha, why do I need an expert to check if it's kosher eggs? Live there be simonim. I can check on the egg itself to see if it's kosher fish egg. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, ki simonim beitzim, kach simonim dogim. If you want to know if it's kosher fish, look at, it has the same siman as a kosher bird. Frag the Gemara, simoni salka daitach, simoni dogim snapi v'kaskesas kisibu. If I want to know if it's a kosher fish, all I need to look is fins and scales. No, what the Brisa means to say, Elaki Simoni Beitzim, Kach Simoni Ibari Dogam. Just like if you want to know, you have the same signs of a kosher bird's eggs, that same sign holds true by kosher fish eggs. The elu hein simoni beitzim. What's a kosher bird eggs? Kol kushaderes v'gagelis. It's rounded and round, but it comes to a point. Roisha echad kad, one end is rounded. Roisha echad kad, one end is like a point. But if it's totally round or totally narrow, it's non-kosher. Tahira. So those are kosher. Round and sharp to the point, like a chicken egg. If they're both heads to a point, but both are round, it's tamei. If it's the album is on the outside, the white is on the outside, and the yellow, the yolk is on the outside, and the album is on the inside. The white is on the inside. Tamei, it's from a tamei egg. If the white is on the outside, and when you crack open the egg, the yolk is on the inside. Tar, it's from a kosher bird. The yolk and the white album is mixed up with each other. That is from a creepy insect. That's their eggs. So again, the question is, why do I need an expert to tell me it's kosher? Any person picking up the egg will be able to tell you if it's kosher or not. The Bryce is talking about if it's melted away and it dissolved, somehow it lost its shape, then you need an expert to tell you if it's from a kosher fish or not. But that's only if you hold that non-kosher fish produce eggs. According to Rabbi Dostoy Mimbiri, his opinion is non-kosher fish do not produce eggs. Sami mekanu bara, because non-kosher fish don't produce eggs. V'atanya, we learned in a brisa, we go to Amabes, ki simone beitzin kach simone ubari dogim. Like eggs, so also are the siman of a fish. So the brisa seems to say, if you want to know if it's kosher eggs, look at it has the same siman as kosher birds' eggs. Birds' eggs and fish eggs are the same. Answers the Gemara, Lav Terutzim Mitratzle, you already changed that brisa. Kach Simoni Kirve Dogim. Really, there is no such a thing, according to Rabbi Dostoy, of non-kosher fish eggs. There's no such a thing. So why do you need to have simon if you want to eat the bladder of the stomach bladder? I think I have it here. It is the swim bladder. This piece over here in a kosher fish, and you don't know if it's from a kosher fish or not kosher fish. It has that rounded stuff that make it look. You look at the siman of a kosher egg, of a kosher bird's egg, and then you'll be able to establish if that swim bladder is permitted to eat. Like the swim bladder of a kosher fish has the same simonim signs as a kosher bird egg, and if it has that, then you can eat it. Then you know it came from a kosher fish. Says the Mishnah, the Brisa, Mein Sham Mimcha, Mai, if you don't have an expert, what's the din? Amar Rav Yehuda, Kivin de Amar, Ani Melachtim Mutarim. If the person said, I was the one that salted it, if the guy said, I salted it, trust me, then you're allowed to buy his fish. Rav Nachman Amar, Ach Yomi Elu Dogam Elu Kirbeim. Rav Nachman says, he got to show you, this is the fish, and this is the intestines that I took out from this fish. It's not enough. You can't trust the guy. Rav Yehuda taught Rav Adabe Dayalai, if a guy who's selling the fish says, I salted the fish, then you believe him, and he can tell you that it's kosher from the guy that's selling it. Another 3 minutes, and then we'll stop. We'll finish the Gemara over here. The Allah shel chiltus, the Mishnah said you're allowed to buy the leaf of the chiltus pshita, because he didn't. Of course, the guy sells it to you. He didn't use a knife to cut it off the chiltus. If you find slices of chiltus along with the leaf, you're allowed to take it from him. Mal the same, I would have thought maybe those slices of the chiltus came from because the guy sliced it with a knife. These slices came from the leaf. Somehow a slice was connected to the leaf, and therefore it was never used. The guy never used the knife to cut it, and therefore you're allowed to buy any leaves and any dices that you find in that mixture. The Mishnah said, pshita, you're allowed to buy olives that are heated up. When it teaches you avogal de rafi tuvi, if they're very soft, ma'u the same. In order to make it so good and soft, like soft olives, ma'u the same. I would have thought chamarama bahu that the guy put wine there. Kamash malam, no. Hainu mishcha hu durfi. It only became so soft because the oil made it very soft, but it's a natural thing. Rabbi Yossi Ameshlochin Asurim. Heichadam Shlochin, Rabbi Yossi Bachnina, Kol Sha'oichaza Biyade Vegar'im Nosai Nishmetis. Rabbi Yossi holds, if you could pick up the olive and the pit drops out, then you know that the guy used a trick to make it so good. He must have put wine in there because wine adds heat to it, and that softened it up. The Gemara teaches you you have caper, you have grasshoppers. Kafloitis is leeks. Haboim in a oitzer. If the guy brings it from his storage house, in a heftik, in a svina, from a ship, mutarim, because he didn't put wine there. Even if it looks good, he didn't put wine there. Hanim karim bekatluza lefnei chenveni. The Gemara, if you buy it from a basket in front of the storekeeper, asurim, that's osir. Because they sprinkle wine on top of it to get you to buy it. So therefore, if you buy it like in a basket, like in a Whole Foods, you can. It's not kosher because maybe they put wine over there. Then the Mishnah, the Brisa says, and the Brisa is going to tell you a fascinating thing. V'chein yain tepuchem. Apple cider vinegar shagoyim haboy mina oitze umina heptek umina slula mitarim. You're allowed to buy it if the guy takes it out of his storage house because there's no wine mixed in there. Hanimka bekatluza, but if he's selling it to you in a little jug in front of his store, asa mipnei shotma'arvin bayayim. They used to mix wine into apple cider vinegar to get you, maybe to make the smell or maybe to make you buy it faster, to change the color. Now the Gemara tells you a fascinating story, and this will end. Okay, we'll end with this before we finish the parak. Tanar Rabbanan, Pam Achas, there was one time, Chosh Rebbe B'meav. Rabbeinu HaKadosh had a gut problem. Amar, a klum yesh odom shiyadeya. Does anybody know, yain tepuchim, apple cider vinegar, shagoyim, asar mutar. Am I allowed to buy it or not? Maybe the guy put wine in there to make the apple cider vinegar. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi spoke up to Rabbi. He said, "Pam achas chosh abba mameyav. My father was very sick in the gut. And they brought him apple cider vinegar. Shel goyim, shel ayin shona. That was aged 70 years. V'shas, and he drank it. V'nisrap, and he got healed. Rabbi said to him, Kol kach you had this good piece of medical advice. And you were holding it back, or you were putting me in pain by not telling me. So Batku, they searched, they found a guy, he had 300 barrels of apple cider vinegar that were aged 70 years old. And Rebbe had this gut problem. V'sashen, he drank it. V'nisrapen, he got healed. So Rebbe got healed from this gut problem because he drank apple cider vinegar, which has a probiotic, which is very good for the gut. Amar, and Rebbe said, Baruch HaMokam Shemosai Lomai L'Shaimrim. Blessed is the Eibishter that he gave over his world to watchers. This guy watched this apple cider vinegar for 70 years in order for me, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, to drink it. Okay, we're going to finish the parak tomorrow and start the next one after. We'll stop here.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Nacht.
Good night.